Hello there. So we've got some essays from you today. Let's take a look at them straight away, see what you wrote. The first one is whether or not an enjoyable activity with a child can develop better skills and imagination in reading. Let's see what you said. Okay, reading alone is insufficient for the overall development of kids. In my opinion, kids ought to be involved in sports since the onset of childhood. This essay will discuss this view by taking examples from gaming, consoles, and sports to support arguments. Okay. I feel like it's missing a first sentence because you went straight into an opinion. It's better to give an introduction to the topic rather than starting off your essay with an opinion. So it could have just, it should have just been like a rephrasing of the topic. There is much debate as to whether reading develops better skills and imagination in children, or if there are alternatives. And then you could answer it in the way you said it. All right, there are lots of ways to write this sentence that I'm suggesting. I've obviously just given you one example of the infinite ways to make it. Okay, so the second thing I want to talk about is this use of the word kids. In IELTS essays, we don't use the word kids. We always use children. Kids is considered informal, so avoid it, please. So it should say, in my opinion, children ought to be involved in sports. Beginning with childhood, or beginning in childhood, I would prefer. And then this last sentence is fine. Moving on. Firstly, reading, and it should not be capitalized. Reading has numerous benefits, comma, nevertheless, playing on electronic game consoles can develop skills that would be impossible to develop just by reading alone. This is largely because, no comma here, when playing on game consoles, a child can develop spatial, reflexive, and various sorts of skills that are impossible to develop with reading. For example, a recent study by Harvard showed that children playing 2 hours a week on game consoles such as Sony PlayStation, careful of your spelling, 4, outperformed their counterparts by 25% in psychometric tests. Therefore, the advantages of reading are clear and give an opportunity to a child to progress in areas neglected by reading. Okay, so this is really interesting. I think you mixed up a word here because you say here, therefore, the advantages of reading are clear. And no, you're obviously meant gaming consoles or something else, but you can see how a mistake like this completely makes the paragraph just suddenly incoherent. You can't, when you have this wrap-up sentence like this, is summary sentence, and you write the wrong word, the reader is left like, wait a minute, didn't the essay just argue something else? So please be careful with this. I'm assuming that you meant to write a different word. If you did mean reading, however, then, well, that's something we probably need to discuss, okay? Why you wrote that. All right, let's move on. Secondly, merely reading can result in developing academically biased skill set in children. This is due to the fact that physical activities introduce new dynamics such as fine motor skills and cognitive skills. For instance, a recent research, now careful here, we don't use a with the word research because it's uncountable, so we never use it in the plural and we never use it with an article. So, recent research by British Sports Council, in fact, noted that students who regularly participate in tournaments such as football, volleyball, and badminton, etc., demonstrate better audio and visual coordination skills than, and rather than saying the ones, I would prefer it if you wrote than those who remain physically inactive. Thus, indulging in physical activity certainly has positive outcomes. All right, that's lovely. It's fine, no problems there. To conclude from the arguments and examples given, I firmly believe that children should indulge in sports. Well, wait a minute, not just sports. The previous paragraph talked about the positive benefits of game consoles. So you really should mention that in your conclusion as well. So it should say, to conclude from the arguments and examples given, I firmly believe that children should indulge in gaming consoles and sports because they can gain many benefits that will help them in their development. This trend will continue to grow in the coming years owing to the sedentary lifestyle. All right, that's not really related to anything. I don't know if I necessarily would have put that here. We're talking about developing creativity and other skills, right? So, oh yeah, not creativity, but imagination. All right, well, similar. So better skills and imagination. You did talk a lot about skills, cognitive skills, motor skills, and all these sorts of skills as well. You didn't really talk about imagination very much, though. That's interesting. You could have, especially with regard to the game consoles, that they help develop imagination by giving children new stimuli that, you know, they can perhaps use like in creative writing or drawing or what have you. So that was an element you could have added here. Alrighty, so, but like I said, this needed to, you need to fix this a little. Let's talk now about your second essay. It's the one about communication with family members. In recent years, family interactions are shrinking. Careful here. In recent years, they have been shrinking in modern societies. In my view, media and unsafe public spaces are the main reasons for this negative trend. This essay will discuss this viewpoint by taking examples from the role of media and lack of outdoor public places to support arguments. Okay, I think that's what you meant. Outdoor, not outer. All right, moving on. Firstly, media played, well, not played, but don't you mean has played? Because it still has an effect on the present. It's not something that exists solely in the past. So for that reason, we should probably use the present perfect here. Media has played a major role in underpinning the recent historical shift from a model of family life centered on the collective space to one dispersed throughout the home. What a lovely sentence. Nice vocabulary, nice grammar. This is largely because, without the comma, with the availability of cheaper and portable media goods, modern families started multiplication of, I wouldn't say that. I would probably just say an increase in the number of individual media items, or something just a little clearer. For example, a recent study by Harvard indicated that 70% of adolescents, without the comma, in the urban areas of London, again no comma, own 2 or more personal electronic gadgets. Therefore, family members spend a negligible amount of their leisure time in family conversations. Now, you've done this kind of mental leap here where, you know, you assume that because you own personal gadgets that you're spending less time with families. The causative relationship here isn't really clear. If there is one, then you need to explain it. What I basically feel like is that, you know, we have points A, B, and C. You went from point A to point C and you totally skipped point B. So that's what I mean. If there is a connection that having more gadgets equals less conversation, then you need to make clear why. Otherwise, it definitely feels like you're skipping a logical, an important logical part of your argument, okay? And this is really important for task development because you're making conclusions that aren't really clear to the reader. All right, moving on. Let's see. Secondly, the local environment, and the availability of formal recreational spaces crucially affect the social skills of young people. This is due to the fact that when meeting with strangers, adolescents develop better communication and other life skills. I don't understand this. Why are adolescents meeting with strangers? And how does that have to do, what does that have to do with recreational spaces? It's just not clear. I think you're trying to say that when adolescents socialize, like, you know, in like face-to-face communication, I think this is what you mean. But we don't want to imply that, you know, adolescents should socialize with strangers. It just sounds so strange. And also, I don't want you to forget that we're talking about family members. Okay? So I don't know why, again, we're introducing this idea of strangers here when we're talking about family member communication decreasing. Anyway, I'll give you a chance to explain it and see what you said about this. Maybe it'll make sense a little further down. So this is due to the fact that when meeting with strangers, adolescents develop better communication and other life skills. For example, recent research without the from British Communications Council revealed that teenagers who visited, not who were visiting, youth clubs performed 30% better in psychometric tests than their counterparts. All right, I like that grammar. As a result, a gradual decline in the outside leisure spaces gave birth to introverts who avoid interacting even with family members. Okay, again, you're making this mental leap that I just can't really kind of wrap my head around. Because one could easily argue here that if children are not in public spaces with strangers, then they're probably in their homes with their families where they are talking. You, I think, are trying to tell us that because they don't develop these skills with random people outside the home, this is in turn affecting how they communicate even with their family members. It's a little kind of, it's a difficult argument to sink one's teeth into. Now, you've probably heard that IELTS is not an exam where your ideas are tested, and that's true. They are testing other things, but the whole attitude here, the whole idea that you're kind of trying to pursue is just kind of difficult. Like it makes the reader think, maybe something else was meant here, and maybe it just wasn't put across clearly. But okay. It could just be that these are truly your ideas, and if they are, then you're certainly getting them across, but I just have some questions about them. Moving on, to conclude, I firmly believe that increasing media usage and declining outdoor spaces, or public spaces would have been good here as well, have adversely affected family life. Communal and personal arrangements will pave the way to solve this critical issue in the coming years. Now, I know that we always like to have kind of like an eye towards the future when we write these essays, especially in the final paragraph, in the conclusion. But what you need to also remember is that you should never mention a new element. So I don't know, first of all, what you mean by either of these. I feel like you're introducing something brand new that has not been brought up in your essay. And so I'd like you to avoid that. So if you are going to make some sort of a future prediction, do make sure that it is in line with things you've already mentioned. So don't mention something out of nowhere for the first time in your conclusion, okay? So, Poornima, there are some nice elements in this essay. I saw a lot of really nice language, a lot of really nice vocabulary. For me, the weakest part was some of these arguments, how you developed some of them. So it was really, for me, a task-response issue. I would love to see more of these essays from you. I know that I should probably expect some in the upcoming days, so I will wait for them. I look forward to them. I wish you lots and luck on your writing, and I hope you found this video correction helpful. So good luck, and I'll be waiting to see what you write next.